I am Mapunda.
Oh,
Yeah.
did he gift it to you?
Yeah.
Like, here,
So I
thank
need
you.
yeah. Because he's on the other side.
Yeah.
The studio on the other side. Yeah.
Did you say I like it?
We did an exchange, me and him.
Ah,
He liked some of my work, and then we decided to.
that's massive.
It is, man. I need to find ways to get it home
You need a truck.
and reframe it. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It needs
I
a
like
truck.
don't you like this frame? The rawness of it.
I do. What I wanted to do, I wanted to put another frame over this one and then put glass over. Just to preserve it. That's
Yes.
it. Yeah, just so that it at least stays for years intact. It used to have a glass and then it broke, so
Yeah.
it just makes sense that I do the same.
Just preserve it.
Yeah, just to keep it in good shape.
It's amazing. Love it. Are you looking at it with different eyes? Not that I've spoken about it.
Hey?
Are you looking at it with different eyes?
No. Not really, but I'm just happy that someone else appreciates it because I appreciate it, and then I thought,
I love it.
art is one of those things. It's either you get it or you don't, or it either touches you in a way or it doesn't, or it repels you.
I love like the industrial and rawness of it.
Yeah.
It could live in such a pristine space.
Exactly.
You know?
And create like a nice contrast.
Exactly.
Within that space.
I think that's what I like about it. Here.
Now you've made me see something that I didn't see actually.
What?
When you put it like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
It is.
And once it's like get value to be like super expensive, you could actually cut it in half and sell it as like 4 pieces,
Sell it
one
in
of
half.
4. Or do like different pieces. Like that guy from, I'm obsessed with that guy from Ghana. I don't know if you know him.
What's
The
his
one who works with sex and stuff. He does these like installations on like big buildings, and he covered one building in like these, those like brown sacks.
Yeah.
There's a whole story. He's like such a renowned artist. He's showcased at all of these biennales.
Yeah.
Ibrahim Mahama. Have you heard of him?
Sounds familiar.
He's incredible.
Ibrahim. He sounds very familiar. I must check him out though.
Yeah, very cool.
Not from India.
Mm-mm.
Okay, there's another guy from India who's a big deal. Okay.
In detail, can you please introduce yourself and what you do?
Okay. My name is Nkosinathi Quwe. I'm a visual artist, a painter to be more specific. But I've tried obviously other forms of art making, but at this point in my life, I'm just focusing on drawing and painting.
Yeah.
And then I'll see where, inspiration takes me.
And can you please tell me a little bit about your upbringing in the Eastern Cape?
I was brought up in a household of beautiful women. It was my mother, my grandmother that raised me. I didn't really have a lot of male figures in my life besides distant uncles and cousins. But I was practically brought up by women. And then I had a very strict grandmother, so school was everything, education was everything to her. So she used to push me like hard to get an education. And for me, because I grew up in a village, I've always wanted to do something that was different, because I grew up amongst a lot of scholars though, people from the Eastern Cape, like they take education very seriously. So, but people were doing things that I was never interested in, like engineering, stuff like that, man. I was just not into that. I was into creativity and making things with my hands. So that led me to then leave the Eastern Cape to come to Joburg because I just needed like a place that could give me what I was looking for. So I ended up coming to Joburg to study art at UJ, and then now I'm practicing.
And what is having been brought up by a lot of female figures from your formative years as a young child, how does that feminine energy comes up in your life and your work?
I think it comes up in how I get creative, because I think, creativity is a feminine energy. The power to create and make something out of nothing. That's quite a feminine energy, and I think that's how it comes forth in me. The fact that I guess I'm willing to let go and be vulnerable as an artist and tell a story, which is sometimes the world can view it as not a manly thing to do sometimes, to expose your feelings, in a public way like that. So I think that's also that also comes from, my feminine side of the family. That sense of being vulnerable and being able to tell what it is, even if it's not verbally, but to express yourself in a way.
And how does that balances out, or maybe it's not a balance, it's a power struggle with the binary, which is the masculinity?
The masculine, yeah. Definitely the masculine is there. I'd say I have more of a feminine side than the masculine side, and I've observed this throughout the years. And I think probably my feminine side is very much stronger, but there is a definite masculine side in me. The stubbornness. I'm quite stubborn. I don't know if I should say that's a masculine trait, but I'm quite stubborn and can be aggressive in that way, in my stubbornness as well, So I'd say that would be definitely a masculine quality for me.
Yeah.
My stubbornness, and sometimes not wanting to back down.
It was so refreshing to hear you say that and acknowledging that without even like a hiccup, to say, I acknowledge my femininity, my feminine energy. Did it take you time to come to the realization?
It did. It took me some time, definitely. We were raised in a society where, as a man, you're not allowed to feel, you know what I'm saying? You're not allowed to cry, you can't express your feelings, you just have to man up. So that's the kind of society that I come from, and I know a lot of people do. And then now it's like you are trapped in this box, where you're not allowed to really to be yourself really. You have to adapt and be a certain way. It took me some time to get to this point, and I think art and creating has a big part to do with it, me coming to this point of my life, because art in itself, the practice, has broken some walls in me, which I think had to be broken, but I know that it was also constructs of masculinity, especially from where I'm from, which is the former Transkei, where people still hold on to tradition very strongly.
What informed your decision to get into the art space?
I've always wanted to express myself, always, because even I've been creative since I was very young. I can remember, obviously starting with making cars out of wire, like any other boy, who grew up in a rural sort of like township type of area. Making, figurines out of clay, that's where it all starts. And then you realize when you get to primary, then you start playing with pencil and paper, and then you realize I really enjoy this, And growing up, I just knew that there was nothing else really I wanted to do. I just didn't know what to call it, but I knew that I wanted to create, either with my hands or I don't know, otherwise, but I've always wanted to create things, Yeah, so it started there.
Yeah, it was just inherent, it was within you and was...
Definitely.
And was there any definitive point in your youth or in your childhood where you were fully aware of the fact that you have something? I have a gift, I have a talent, I have something here in art.
There was a point where I became aware. I think that was the starting point of someone actually acknowledging that I could actually draw, and it was my mother. My mother is a teacher. She used to be a teacher. She's just retired now. But she used to, when creating programs for her students, so she used to like draw diagrams for them, and she would ask me to draw for her, and because I think it was a way of encouraging me in a way, or letting me do what I like or love, because she knew I really enjoyed drawing, so she would let me sketch these diagrams for her, and that's where it really started. Then I realized from that point that, okay, if she says that I'm good at this, maybe I can push it further. Even friends though, reinforcing that, seeing maybe my sketches in my sketchbooks and be like, okay, this is good. And then I just took it further. But I've always believed that I am creative. I believe that in myself, and I could see that I got some talent. I should take it further, actually.
Do you believe that one can acknowledge their talents without an audience, or without claps, or without feedback?
That's a tough one. That's a good one, actually. I think as human beings, we do need feedback. It's very important. Feedback is everything, actually, because if you're creating something and that's you giving out energy, right? You have created this thing and you're giving it out to the world. Your expectation, I guess, or your reward at the end of the day is that someone says something about it. Negative or positive, it doesn't matter, but someone says something about it, or comment about it, or say, this is wonderful, oh, I despise this is disgusting, but it was to start that conversation. And when that energy when you receive that energy back, it gives you more energy. So I think at the end of the day, it's really about energy, and as much as you could say, I'm talented, I'm this, I'm that, if you don't get feedback from people, then I think you kind of get lost, because it's also hard for you to measure things if you don't get feedback. You don't know where to do better, where to tweak, because you're not getting any feedback. You're like in a box all by yourself, So I think, yes, it is important to believe in yourself 100%, but also feedback is important because it's about communicating that idea and getting something back.
As a creator, how difficult is it, or how much of it do you think about the feedback and the audience when you are creating, more especially because of technology and social media and all the multiple platforms that we have that you can put your work out there?
So how do I?
Yeah. How do you create?
Yeah.
Knowing that there are all these multiple platforms that you could share your work on,
yes.
And how much of that influences your creativity and your creation process?
To be honest, for me, when I'm creating, I never really think about the outcome, especially about how people might receive this. I'd say not quite, no, not really, because when I make something, my focus is putting the idea out there first and then take it to the world. The world part is the last stage for me, because that's when I'm like, okay, now I'm ready for feedback. Give me feedback. What do you guys think? Only after that I can then tackle that part of, the process. But the most important thing for me is to create the thing to the best of my ability and say what I want to say. And then at the end, we can now deal with, feedback and whatever.
Did you have any key mentors or people who deeply influenced who you are, what you believe in, and what you're committed to in your life?
I think my first influence was my grandmother, definitely. She was a nurse. Um, she had a car, and this was back in the day. She had a car, she drove herself around, a very independent woman. So that was my first influence, and you know, I think in me, you know, also doing what I do, I'm working every day to be the best in what I do, because I've only had, you know, role models, you know, starting from my grandma, you know, who showed me what dedication is, you know, if you're really dedicated to something. There are also, you know, people that I look, you know, up to, other artists, big artists in the industry, you know, from different disciplines too. It doesn't have to be fine art. It can be from your fashion design to up to the corporates. Like I look at everyone. I mean, I also read books to look for inspiration, autobiographies, to look for inspiration from other people. And what fascinates me is that, you know, most creative people or most people that are successful in life have gone through some difficult times, you know, and it has been a fight for them to rise to the top, which is quite fascinating for me, because that's a big part of what my work is about, actually, is rising above the struggles. So I find that quite fascinating.
Speaking of which, what would you say is the one problem, be it socio-political, cultural, or economic, you intend to solve or address with your work?
Definitely the economic part, that's a big part of it. The political, but I'd say also the spiritual. I think those three things are quite important. You know, yes, you know, the financial side of it, the economical side of it is very, very, very important. Talking about land and so on and so forth. And then, you know, I think every piece of art has a bit of politics in it, whether those politics are very, you know, obvious or quite subtle. But I think an art piece by on its own is a political statement. And then, you know, also addressing the spirit, because I think as someone who creates, it would be very wrong for me to create, you know, just working with the material side of things. I think there's the other side that we definitely draw strength from, which is the spiritual side. And so that's important for me to tie those three together.
You highlighted the economic and the spirituality side of things. Let's start with the economic. For you as an artist, because for a long time there has always been the stigma of art doesn't pay, or the glorified broke and dirty artist type of perception, right? Has art proven to be a viable profession for you economically?
It has. But I'll tell you what, I think, you know, somehow we get it wrong as artists from the start, you know, especially from the point where we're really struggling financially. You know, I think there should be ways, and most of us aren't taught these things, but I think that first of all, artists they should learn how to make money outside the art. They shouldn't focus on the art to make money. We should be very, you know, entrepreneurial people. We need to have other hustles or other businesses around the art that we've set up, or we've partnered with people, so that we can have that type of income that doesn't rely on you producing an art piece. So I think that's very important, and I had to learn that. I learned that very late in my career, you know, and I think should I have learned that earlier, I would have been far financially by now, but it's fine. The lesson has been learned, and I think it's now very important for us, you know, the more, I guess, older or mature artists, to impart that knowledge to the young ones and say, don't rely on your craft. Make other ways of bringing in income, so that your sole purpose is to create without feeling any anxiety about your finances, you know, because once you start getting anxious about where you are financially, then I think you become a victim of trying to please the masses.
With spirituality, I mean, it's something that comes, it's very apparent in your work that you do. And I wanted to to just get a distinction in terms of like, is it institutionalized religion kind of spirituality, or it is spirits in another form, maybe like African kind of spirits? I mean, some of your work, it symbolizes, I mean, I see a lot of spirituality, I see a lot of religion, I see a lot of fashion, in terms of like the cloth that the people who go to pray or to praise or to honor whatever spirits that have been here or are still here. Because with the clothing or the cloth that people wear to these churches or to go to praise or to go to spiritual institutions, it's like a signifier of like color, red and white, the green and white, the white and the blue, right? So can you extend a little bit more in terms of how this spirituality informs your work, and what type of spirituality is this?
Okay, so the spiritual side of the work is, you know, when I started like conceptualizing this thing, I thought of, especially this theme that I'm working on, I thought of there's a moment in your life where you are about to make a big decision that will change your life forever. So the work is kind of like that moment, that moment in time where everything is suspended, all thought is suspended, and you have to make this big decision that will change your life. So I'm trying to capture those moments. Those moments can come either through meditation, they can come through prayer or storytelling. It's like those moments where you've decided that this is what you want to do for your life in order for your life to be better, or you're going through turmoil in your life, and in the middle of the storm you find peace of mind. You know, you find that oasis in you that lets you calm down. So the work is really about that point in life, you know, where you're facing challenges and you've just made a decision that, you know what, no matter what, I'll rise above, you know, I'll endure, I'll keep going. Yeah, so that yeah, man.
Why are you laughing?
It just, no, like that thought just took me there for a while. So yeah, so that's the part that's important for me, is to put that point across, you know, of that little moment in life that happens. So it
transitional moment.
That transitional moment. So therefore I use baptism as also a symbol of you know, a symbolic thing for that moment, and water as really and water, you can say water becomes sometimes a barrier, sometimes it becomes your adversity. So I talk about adversity, you know, facing adversity as well through my work, as you are making those decisions that, you know, some decisions are not easy, some are easy, but life is like those waves that keep coming at you, and you need to, you know, either go under or over. But yeah, so the spiritual side is just that, you know, it's not, I wouldn't say religious, because for me, yes, there's the two dichotomies in my work, the institutional religious images in terms of the garments that you see, you know, they belong to a particular faction, which is, you know, obviously an institution on its own. And then there's versus the spiritual side that I've just spoken about, which happens inside but not outside in what you dress or what you represent. But yeah, the spirit, you know, that inner you, or the real you that, you know, has to survive, or, you know, has to keep going for you to be a better person. So that's what the spiritual side is really about.
And do you think this is going to be a reoccurring theme in your work, that it's going to carry over as like a golden thread, or it's just a series that will stop at a particular time?
It will definitely carry over, but it will probably change in terms of images to something else. I might maybe leave a thread here and there just to tie the whole thing, but it will definitely change into something else. But the changes for me have been very interesting, because I try to have, I don't know if it's something I do on purpose, like it's intentional, but my work has some sort of fluidity from one thing to the next, because my previous theme actually, the biggest one that I've done so far was about identity. I was talking about my own identity, coming from the Eastern Cape in Johannesburg, challenges that I face in a different environment. When you start to question your own masculinity sometimes, those type of questions. So my work also searching for the man in you, so to speak, as you're growing up into adulthood. So my work was really about that, and it was also a spiritual journey in its own right, because when you're growing as a person, you don't just grow physically, you also grow spiritually. And then that transitioned into this, part of the series, I guess, of my work, where it's still about finding oneself, spiritually, but I guess also taking it day by day, as you experience your human life on earth, and trying to go through each day.
And I mean, looking at the piece of work behind you, it's a 154 by 92 centimeters, titled A Red Gathering. Obviously, it's oil on canvas.
Yeah.
It's repetition, sameness but different in a way. And it goes to show the level of dedication in your work to just sit or stand there and do this big piece of work over and over and over again. Same but different at the same time. What would you say is a driver to that sort of motivation that one needs to do a body of work like that?
I guess it will depend on the way you tackle it, really. For me, I'll speak about my experience, and for me it was quite a meditative process, because I knew what I was, getting myself into, but it was a challenge. I was challenging myself, and it was a beginning of some sort of meditation for me, moving, painting from the foreground all the way to the back, and just moving along with the work. It was quite intense, because when you have to concentrate on different figures and try to blend in the different tones, it can take a toll on you, especially with your eyesight. So, but I took it as meditation and a challenge. So it was more of me challenging myself and fighting with myself to have this piece done. So it was more of a challenge, and also trying to show the beauty of colors as well, like the raids, how they come through. I think also as you make art, you shouldn't forget that it's also about the beauty, not just about what you're trying to put across, but how beautifully can you put it across. And I think that's quite important, like aesthetics, because for me the raids, I think that's what seduced me to to create a piece like this. And also red is a very powerful color. There's a whole lot of connotations, linked to the color red. But it's also a very fiery and beautiful color, very passionate color. So yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful work. Holistically, when you look at from far, but then you get into the detail, right? Then things start jumping up to you the more you look at it.
Yeah.
Like for me, one of my favorite things about this is the top right corner. I don't know if it was an accident, but there seems to be like a stroke of white. It sort of looks like a color seeping into that darkness. And almost my interpretation is like that light from the top, it's firing, although it might be coming from behind, but it's almost like firing and lighting the painting from the foreground. I don't know if I'm making sense.
No, definitely. Yeah. So
because you can appreciate the light in the dark.
Definitely. And in that way, I also try to create space, like an illusion of space. So you think this is in space, and you're going back, going to the back, and it has depth and all that stuff.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Did the schools you went to teach you how to be a good person?
Not at all. Not at all.
Your teachers are going to be very
that's-
proud
that's
of
a-
you.
That's a funny question. No. You know, I went to good schools. They were expecting us to obviously have a good conduct, be respectful. But I got that from home. I really can't credit any school. I'm sorry. I can't credit any school. I can credit them for teaching me how to write, how to read, definitely. But with being the person that I am, I got that from home. Yeah.
And then was there ever tension with you finishing matric and going to university to pick a career path to follow in terms of a degree? Like you went to UJ and you went straight into art school.
Yeah.
Was there any tension, like maybe you should, air codes, consider a serious degree or serious profession?
Sure. I'm so lucky because even to this day, I don't know how. When I asked my grandma at the time, and my mother that I wanted to pursue art, they actually were like, they didn't really even know what art was about, but they realized how serious I was about this thing. And I guess they were like, okay, if you're really serious about it, we'll give you a chance, go do it, And they supported me since then. So they've been very supportive. And that, I think, for me, that was like a big thing because from then onwards, I didn't doubt what I wanted to do, or, there was no complications about it. I just knew what I wanted to do. It just happened like that.
Do they fully understand it,
They
the
don't
art world?
They don't fully understand, but when they see the work, maybe they see a picture, they appreciate what I do. They don't fully understand it, but they appreciate it, which I think is very important, and yeah, that keeps me going.
What would you say is the best appreciative words that ever came from your mom and your grandma in relation to your work?
It's not in words. It's not in words. They weren't good with words like that. Like really articulating that feeling or that appreciation about something I've created. But they've always encouraged me, and I'd see it in their encouragement that they really appreciate this, They wouldn't really say it out there that, wow, this is great, like you're really talented, but they would show ways, that what you're doing is cool, we appreciate it. So it was in the things they did, but not in words,
Oh, they just said, Donam,
Oh,
you already
but
know.
That's it, and which I'm on the right path. They weren't expressive like that though about the actual thing, but they would say things that would let me know. Yeah. Or do things that would let me know. Yeah.
Have you ever worked on a body of work or a painting that you embodied the character you were painting or you were drawing, that you found it hard to let go once the project was done?
Let's see. Oh, that's a good question. Have I ever had such a piece in mind? Let me think. I think it must have been after varsity, where it happens sometimes, but not as intense as after varsity. But I learned from an early stage not to be emotional about what I do in terms of having to sell it, not to be emotional about that part, because I didn't make it for me, I made it to share it, with the world. So I got that very quickly, that not that it's easy all the time. I mean, sometimes I don't want to sell some pieces, but I have to let the people have them because they're not for me. I made them for the world, so I have to let go. Definitely, not that it's easy.
And what influences your creativity?
It's a lot of things. It's stories, it's pieces of music, it could be documentaries, it could be a conversation, it could be a book, it could be something I saw in a magazine. So it's really, it's about everything that I experience, daily life, interactions that I observe or that I experience myself. So I draw inspiration from a lot of things. But I'd say it has been photographs most of all. Like I'm a photography fan. So I always look at photography and see how the cameraman took a certain picture, the composition. Why did he choose this composition? I think for me that's quite exciting as a painter to look at what photographers are doing and try to translate that in painting.
And would you say that's the most exciting part of your creative process?
Not the most. I think the most is being in touch with myself and struggling with a painting. I think that's the most fun part about it, the excitement and the frustration. And then obviously the cherry on top, once you're done and you're satisfied, But the struggle with the work, I sometimes call it I'm fighting with the work. Like we're not agreeing on something. Like for example, this drawing at the back, I'm still fighting with it. We're not agreeing on some things. And I love that because it brings out other things that I didn't even plan in an artwork. It just comes out and I'm like, oh, okay. Now I see it in a different light. So yeah.
I mean, I'm looking at that work and for me it looks finished. And now my question to you is, what influences your decision to discard a piece of work if you have been working on it when it's already done? Do you ever do that?
Sometimes. But let me start with this point. I was actually struggling about that, exactly that. Is this drawing done? Should I? Because I had added some things at the bottom there and then I decided, no, man, it's not working. Let me take them out, and then I'm like, is it done? What should I add? What should I take out? So I'm right there at that stage at this point. I'm deciding what should I let go? What should I still work on? But I also think it's done, but there's something that I'm not quite sure of at this point that I need to tweak and then I'll be satisfied. But it's quite a very good question because I don't know if sometimes the decision is intuitive or it's technical. I think there's a thin line, but sometimes you feel like it's done. And then technically, sometimes you feel like if you put more lines, you're going to mess it up. So it's like a balance of the two.
2 in 1. When do you know when a piece of work is done? And is a piece of work ever complete?
I know when a work is done, when the two things, when I feel like it's done by observing certain things in the work that I should have, I tick certain boxes that should make sense visually, things like depth, and overlapping and all that stuff. And then once I feel that that's met, then I make the decision that I shouldn't go further, otherwise I'll overdo it. I should leave it as it is. So it's really it's decisions. You really have to decide, but you have to decide on something that works.
Why do you create and what need does it satisfy?
I create because of the need to communicate with people. I really enjoy communication, and it's sometimes hard for me to approach people. So art has been a thing that I use to really open up conversation. So it helps in that regard. It satisfies a need in me to express myself or take, like to purge, what I'm like, to take things out. Either my point of view, either my feelings about something, or it could be anything. But it's a process for me to be able to do that, and it's quite therapeutic. I enjoy it, and it helps me know what other people think at the same time when that conversation is opened up.
What is your definition of art?
Art is life. That's my definition of art. I mean, art, you find art on the streets, you know, you find art, you could find art, you know, in how people move, how when they're working, how people have a rhythm. So for me, art is really, it's life. It's an everyday happening. It's the only difference is that do you recognize as such? Can you capture that moment and keep it and share with the world? So I think that would be the only difference. If you recognize, you know, the art in life, I think you also, you know, like savor moments, you know, and not always also live in the future, but be present in the now, in what's happening now, and you savor such certain moments that happen in your life. So it's about, yeah, that's art for me, life and capturing those special moments.
If art is life, are there any limits to human creativity?
I don't think there's any limits to creativity, human creativity to be specific. I don't think there's any limits. The only limit is really how we think about it. But otherwise, there's so many possibilities. Some possibilities, man, we haven't even thought about. You know, like things like for example, like Umbongeni Buthelezi, how he figured out how to paint with plastic. I think for me that was so genius and so simple, because plastic is our mundane object that we work with on a daily basis, but how he thought to use it as a pigment on canvas, that's where the genius is.
Cultural radar, what is moving the needle and hitting the cultural nerve right now?
Sure, that's a deep question. For me, the way I see it, what's moving the needle right now and what has been moving the needle actually, I would say would be the hip-hop culture. That's I think a language that the youth understand in terms of pop culture, and it's been, you know, it's been actually like that for a long time now. You know, if you think of the times of Basquiat in New York, that, you know, 70s scene in New York with graffiti, you know, on trains and things like that, that was very much associated to hip hop, and I think it still is even today. The youth are very much drawn, but now I think there's also with the graffiti, because it's visual culture, the youth also recognize art also in what would be called, you know, high art, but also questioning those establishment, you know, in that what is high art, what is low art really. So I think even those questions even today are still very valid, but I think what's moving the needle right now is still hip hop, and art all is playing in between the lines as it has been for a very long time, you know, but it's a voice to be reckoned with as well.
Yeah. Not that it ever went away or it went anywhere else, because it's always omnipresent. Art is life, like you already said.
Yes.
Would you say though that there's a bit of resurgence with like the art world and the interest in the art field?
I think definitely there's been quite a big interest in the arts, especially locally. I can speak of what I've seen locally, that also people are buying a lot of art made by black artists, which is, I don't know, it's like there's this, I don't know if it's been like this, but I've seen that there's this whole revolution of you know, purposefully looking for the African voice. And African art, I'd say, I hate to label it as African art, I'll just call it art out of Africa, because also to put labels on it is quite detrimental. But I'd say art from this continent, definitely from the south to the north, is making a mark, and people are buying a lot of it. Yeah.
How do you define success for yourself?
Being able to still do what I do. and enjoy it, I think for me that's success. Yeah. Being able to still do what I do on a daily and enjoy it and still get a kick out of it. It means that I'm living my life's purpose.
What has been the lesson that took you the longest to learn?
To be myself and that my voice is authentic. I think that took me a while to get. It took me a while to get. And also, I have no competition. I'm my only competition. I think that also took a while for me to get. When you come out of varsity, there's this art competitions that you are encouraged to enter. And I think sometimes when you are not aware of yourself, like mentally, just being aware of yourself, you can get lost in competing with others. And for me, I realized that later on that because I didn't win a competition doesn't mean that my work sucks or I'm not good at what I do. It just means that that's what they prefer at that time. It has nothing to do with me, and it took me a while to actually get that, So, Now I understand what it is, and I have learned to know that I have a voice and it's authentic.
Is there suffering in the gift that you possess?
Yes, there is. I think like any great gifts, they come with some burden or suffering. And I think the suffering part is very important. If it's too easy, then it's not worth it. But if you suffer, it makes it all worth it. Once you get to the finish line, you really, it's something, it means a lot. So I think, yes, there is suffering in what I do. I don't want to acknowledge it too much. Not that I also trying to dismiss the fact that there is suffering, but I'd rather focus on the good side of things. But the suffering definitely makes it worthwhile. So yes, also trying to put something across is not as easy. So there is pains in doing that, and the pain of growing and expanding as well.
Who taught you how to properly monetize your talent and to be able to make a living off of it without feeling guilty or feeling like a sellout? Because for a long time there has always been this misconception that art is to be gifted, art is to be enjoyed. If you get into art for the money aspect of it, then it kind of like devalues the principles of what art is. But I think that the tide has, the wave has moved a bit. Not even a bit, like a whole lot. Like artists now get to enjoy and to reap the rewards of their talent and their gifts and everything that they put into what they do, because it's not something that they do in their sleep.
No,
it's work.
It's work. I think what has helped me is speaking to more established artists in terms of how they view the point of view of their career. What is it? How do they see it? And I've read books also which has helped me to see what I do not just as a hobby but as a business and be serious about it. And I think that's also very important that you come across professionally as an artist and you take yourself seriously. So for me, that was very important to actually distinguish that for myself, that at the end of the day, yes, I'm a creative, but I also run a business. For the mere fact that I sell something to you and you buy it, that's a transaction right there. It's a business transaction. So I need to see myself in that manner and respect, also the clientele, people that I make work for, and so that they can respect me back. And so that has been a great lesson for me, and also to get away from the stereotypes of what an artist should act like, what an artist should be, an artist is actually a businessman, and I think we have to recognize that and treat ourselves as businessmen, especially if we want to see, the financial change. We have to change the way we do things and the way we see things as well.
How do you value your work? By how much someone is willing to pay for it, or by how much it took from you to make it?
I'd say definitely calculating my costs. My costs is very important. The time that I took to make the work, from materials and everything, research, time, and all that stuff. That's very important to pay yourself back in terms of your time, and also to pay your business back in terms of the materials or the expenditure, that you occurred while making the work. And then what follows after that is a couple of things, and it's different for every artist. Things like experience, factor, where have you shown your work, really, are quite important because it puts a certain value to the work as well. The types of places you've shown. Publications, any publications about your work or yourself, that's also very important. Also, when people Google your name, something must come up, either in terms of work or literature or, reviews about what you're doing. That's quite important. So those factor as well in your pricing, because you also have to be realistic, and you also know your market, basically. Where are you in the market, and try to position yourself in a way that you are satisfied with in that market.
What do you know now that you didn't know then that you wish somebody told you?
I wish they had told me that it wasn't going to come easy, that I'm going to have to really grind. Sometimes you're so blasé about things when you come out of school, you think, it's just going to happen, this thing. And you realize that this is actually a lot of work, because we think it just ends by finishing an artwork, but there's a whole lot of things that go behind. You actually build a system, and it's good definitely as an artist to have a system or people around you that create a system that works for you. And I learned that very late. So I also wish someone would have told me that it's not only about you, you need a team. If you want to make it big, you need a team as an artist. You need to follow a certain regimen. You need to plan. You need to do all of these things. You need to have goals. I wish someone could have told me that way back, and I think I would have started early in actually recognizing, how I could propel my career going forward.
Is race about power or color?
Race is about power. Race is about power. I think that's how racism started in the first place. It was about one person thinking that they're better than the other because of the color of their skin. So also being able to do that because this person has the power to do that. So it is about power, definitely. Color is about power. Yeah.
Is love a feeling or a choice?
Love is a choice, most definitely, because you know what? If it was a feeling, then you'd be in trouble, man. Like a lot of relationships would be in trouble. Love is definitely a choice, because there comes a time when you look at your partner and think, did I really put myself in this situation? And you choose to love that person again and again and again and again, So love is a choice. You choose to love, man.
And when do you know when you're truly loved?
When the actions say it, when you can feel it, you see it. And I think you know that you truly love when someone shows you love. Not just someone who's going to tell you I love you, but when they do certain things, like take certain actions and you see that, wow, this person really loves me. So I think definitely love is a doing word. We have to put some action into it. Yeah, so it's about action for me.
By what standards do you judge yourself?
Wow. By the decisions and actions I take. You know, I ask myself, was that the right choice? Was that the right word I used at a certain time to that person? So I judge myself by the decisions I've made and the actions I've taken.
I am most happy when?
When I'm painting and listening to music.
I believe in?
I believe in universal love, definitely. I think through love, anything is possible. And when you love yourself and you love what you do, anything is possible. So love is the highest vibration, so I believe in that very much.
What is your personal mission statement?
I am here to tell stories, that teach, people to reach within themselves. So I'd say I'm here to open up that gateway where people can feel comfortable to reach within, either by what they see, either by what I've painted or drawn. That I hope that sparks something within them that will make them start thinking, inwards. And yeah, I think that's the first biggest step to any change, is for you to recognize what's happening within you, and then you can move forward. So yeah.
What do you wish for yourself?
Success and happiness, but most of all, lots of love. Yeah. Even in success, the love I'd like to sustain, definitely, and receive, of course, and give.
And what is your daily prayer?
My daily prayer, man, is for my family to be safe, and for me to be able to give the world the best of myself.
I think that is a beautiful point to leave it at. Thank you very much for your time, Nkosinathi.
Thank you, Jerry. That was really amazing, man.